Good morning, everyone. It is Wellness Wednesday, and one of our favorite days of the week, and we're super excited to have a guest on today. But good morning, everyone. This is Carol Sue, aka Naughty Boss, live with
TwoSistas. Hey, good morning, everyone. It's Janice, aka Wellness Diva 5.0. And like Carol said, we have an amazing guest on today. So we're just going to hop right on into it. We are excited to welcome to the TwoSistas podcast family, Dr. Tanya Panyter. Dr. Tanya, welcome.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
We're so happy to have you here. Thank you. Now, I'm glad that I did not butcher up your names because Carol can attest to I've been butchering up everyone's names. So thank you.
You pronounced it perfectly.
Awesome. So you have a very unique background, but I want to start by asking, as a naturopathic physician, you have niched down so much, what I think is amazing, where you coach women and work with women who suffer from migraines. And in the menopause era, many of us do suffer from migraines. So wow, why did you decide to just work in that area?
It wasn't a decision so much as I was just led here. But when I was younger, I struggled with migraines and chronic headaches for probably close to 2 decades. It started after a car accident when I was in my teens, and it just kind of progressively got worse until I went to med school and figured out that, the medications that weren't working for me, there was a reason why. And naturopathic medical school just kind of showed me that, if we look at the body as a whole being, and we work on bringing it back in balance when it's not right, then things like migraines and joint pain and Hashimoto's and all of that can be controlled. I don't necessarily say that I'm cured, because I have had the occasional, if I don't take care of myself, but my last migraine now was 7 years ago. So as I went into practice, I really loved treating women with migraines because I knew it intimately. I knew what they were going through, and I was able to offer them a hope they'd never had before. And it was just so rewarding. And long story, but eventually I kind of progressed into, trying this online thing, see what's this about, because it'd be kind of cool to have this little extra stuff on the side that I'm kind of building on my own as I'm working in the clinic. And then 2020 hit, and I was up and rolling. I mean, the timing was just pretty amazing, pretty divine, in my opinion. But I haven't looked back, and it's just as effective working as a coach online with women across the nation than it is working one-on-one with them in a clinic. And so that's what I'm doing now.
Wow. And I know, Carol, so obviously you can relate so much more. I mean, I've had an occasional migraine, but not like my sister.
Right. And, mine was not something necessarily, and everyone, gets migraines, either they're just their bodies and, their hormones, just whatever it may be. And some people it's chronic and they're born with it. In my case, mine was induced by, I had a C-section, and ironically, when I was in the, after I delivered our daughter, or actually it was our son, they accidentally took the catheter out, which the nurses shouldn't have done that. And what happened was I had the, you're in bed, that sensation that you got to go pee and you're going to get up. So Lord behold, I don't know how I did it, but I dragged my body out and crawled to the bathroom, where they later found me and brought me back. And within 30 minutes, that was my first introduction into migraines, because you with a spinal, you have to lay flat on your back for, usually about 24 hours. So that didn't go over too well. So that was kind of my introduction, and really kept on that path for 20, 30 years, to the point where, it was debilitating. And I learned to control it by really understanding, because I didn't want to be on medication for it. just really understanding when the onset would be and to take the necessary precautions, whether it was, to go to a cool, dark room, rest my eyes, make sure that I was not on any kind of devices, as we later on started using more devices, computer and whatnot. And now I basically really controlled it to the point of, I very structured in my gut health and making sure that my gut's getting all the proper nutrients. And I'm blessed over the last probably 6 years. I maybe get 1 or 2 a year, if that. There's been a year that I've never even had them. And I do believe there's, a better way than automatically being put on medication. But I do understand and feel for those that definitely need it, because the pain can be, it's debilitating. It just, leaves you not only during the actual migraine, which a lot of people that don't suffer don't understand, because it is not a typical headache. You get a headache, you deal with it, whether you're taking your Advil or your Tylenol or whatever you want to do. But with a migraine, you have that, what I call the after spent of your body fighting the pain, and your body is just spent. It's exhausted. It's like you've been through this workout. And a lot of people don't understand that. Those that do suffer chronically, or even, the occasional one that I get, it can take me up to 48 hours before my body recovers from fighting that.
Yeah, and unfortunately, some of them never actually fully recover before their next one hits. So they're either in the stage, or they're in the post stage, or then they've moved back into the pre-stage. I mean, it's horrible. It's
a horrible cycle.
Yeah.
Now, Dr. Tanya, when a person is in that cycle, I mean, I really don't understand how your patients would keep going on like that. It just must be so debilitating. I can't even imagine.
Yeah. And something that kind of compounds it is, there's a lot of issues with serotonin, which is one of our big, happy neurotransmitters, right? And there's a big link between migraines and serotonin. And so then not only are you living in chronic pain, but then the massive amounts of depression that comes along with it. And some of it's due because of your life of pain. You can't do anything. But then the other part of it is there's actually a physiologic reason that they're just completely depressed all the time. And it can be horrible, and it can lead to, suicide and a lot of mental issues and things like that. So there's a lot of it's not really diagnosable as PTSD, but I mean, seriously, those kinds of symptoms and the anxiety that comes around the pain, and just living in fear that this pain is going to come at any given moment, and you don't want to do anything that's going to trigger it. So then their lives just become so small. It's all about that protection and keeping that migraine at bay, and they can't enjoy anything. And it's sad. It's really, really sad. And I'm lucky that.
So what would be your number one go-to? I mean, I've learned obviously through my own experience and really listening to body and knowing the triggers, making sure that, which is atypical of anyone that suffers from severe migraines, that they're going to, avoid certain foods, obviously little sugar to no sugar, stay away from caffeinated products. And the weird thing about caffeinated products is if you're lucky enough to catch the onset of a migraine, that is when you're going to, in the early stages, I would take Cafragot, which was a prescription, but you would have to know your body so much, and you'd have to just catch it at the right time. Otherwise you have the chance of making the migraine worse if you didn't time it right. That's, for most people, is not even a doable thing, because you just, they come in so quick, you just don't have that time to react. So what is your number one advice that you tell your clients on, listening to their body? What would be the number one cue for them to say, okay, you're at that onset point?
I mean, that's a really great question. And part of the problem in how we treat migraines is we don't look at how individual it is. So I can't give one best thing for somebody to look at, because it's different for every single person. But that's the key, is starting to really pay attention to your particular migraines. one of the things that I talk with my clients all the time about is when you're stuck in that chronic migraine cycle, if you have one once a month and it comes around ovulation or it comes around your period, like that's pretty, like we know that's going to be a hormonal migraine, and so there you go. But when you have, 2, 3, 4, 5 a week, then we usually are having more than one kind of migraine. And so I like to bring it to people's attention that a migraine is not just a migraine. We don't want to pay attention to the pain, because who wants to do that? But it's a really important step in starting to understand what's going on with your body and with those migraines. So when you are starting the pain, what is it like? What is the quality like? Where does it start? How does it look? What's the progress look like for you? And when people start paying attention to that, they start saying, hey, they're actually all I've got 4 different types of migraines that I'm able to figure out now. Okay, great. Now we know that we've got 4 major things we need to pay attention to. And each one of those could potentially have the first early symptom that's different than the other 3. So it can be really kind of confusing unless you're looking for those differences and you're looking for those first symptoms. But then once we do, and we start, kind of piecing out the individuality of each of those migraines for that particular person and start seeing the patterns behind them, then we're really able to start targeting our treatments to which particular migraine is happening at the time. And not everybody is able to pick all those things out. And that's okay, because as you work on healing your body, things will just start to resolve anyway. And then it will become much more obvious when you're not in pain or recovering from the pain every moment of the day. When you actually start feeling good, then you can actually start picking out those symptoms again. And then it starts to become a little bit more clear. So maybe not the most helpful answer, but.
Dr. Tanya, would it be beneficial for one of your patients or clients that you're coaching through something like this to keep a journal? In other words, maybe with hormone or whatever it may be something, could it be a food, I guess is what I'm trying to get at. Could it be something very specific that just for whatever reason triggers the onset?
Yeah, I've had clients figure out that a particular spice on a food was a trigger for them. That the tap water they were drinking when they moved to their new house was a trigger for them. I mean, who's going to track your tap water intake? I've had people note that when their blood pressure gets below, drops by 5 or more points, it triggers a migraine. So the more that they're familiar with their bodies and tracking those things, then that's when you really start to see those patterns emerge. And it can be easy to get obsessive about it. So you have to kind of watch that you're not literally writing down every moment of your day of what's happening, but just having kind of that detective hat on and really paying attention to, all right, well, what was different today that I did that might have triggered something? And then thinking back, a couple hours or, whatever. I have a list of things that I have my clients track. They're tracking their blood pressure. They're tracking their food intake, they're tracking hydration, tracking stress, where they are in their cycle, and their sleep. And that's kind of a good basic foundational. And then as they're starting to see more patterns emerging, then they're able to kind of hone in on the things that really are important for them. And, and then starting to track that and then forgetting the rest of it. So.
Gotcha. Sorry about that. I was just double checking to make sure everything was up and running here. The other question that I want to ask you, I want to go back to serotonin, because, as you had mentioned, sometimes, and please correct me if I'm wrong, it's probably a depletion of serotonin. Are there any supplements or are there any foods that can help directly with that?
Yeah, there's actually a handful of neurotransmitters that are implicated in migraine. So for somebody where triptans really work, then serotonin is going to be one of those that's really important to focus in on. There's also dopamine, there's also histamine. So there's a few others, but specifically to answer your question, if it is a serotonin issue, then dietarily doing whole grain carbs are going to be probably the best thing. So I've found that there are some people who do amazing on like a paleo or a keto type diet where they're really restricting carbs and they just feel way better. But by and large, the women that I work with, when we try to restrict carbs like that, it doesn't go well. It tends to spike their migraine frequency because it is a serotonin, or at least in part, it's a serotonin issue. And so then they're not getting enough of the nutrients that they need to be able to make it. So usually we want to do a whole grain, anti-inflammatory, organic grain with each meal, usually about 1/2 to 3/4 cup, depending on the person. There are some supplements, but the supplements have to be done very carefully because a lot of the medications, triptans, SSRIs, SSNRIs, all work on the serotonin pathway. And so if they're on those and then they add in a serotonin supportive supplement as well without clearing it with their doctor, they can end up with something called serotonin syndrome, and that can be deadly. So I just wanted to throw that out there before I even talk about them, so that anybody who is taking medications, you have to talk to your doctor about whether or not you can start any of the serotonin support before you do it, so that you don't end up with severe issues. But that being said, so 5-HTP is a precursor to serotonin. And so that can actually be really helpful. With my clients, we actually, to try to help them off of their triptan, because a lot of times the triptan rebound cycle is a big problem for women that I start seeing. So one of the first things we have to do is get them off of the use of that regularly. And so 5-HTP, St. John's wort, which is another, it almost acts like an SSRI. And those two are really helpful in kind of providing that extra serotonin support without the spikes and dips that happen when you're on a triptan. So there's 5-HTP, melatonin. A lot of times that combo works really, really well for people. And they can use it as an abortive. And then usually what ends up happening is their migraine starts to kind of, it's delayed for a few hours, starts to come back. So then they take another dose. And then, up to 3 doses. And usually by that 3rd dose, we see that it goes away. So what we're doing with that kind of frequent repeated dosing is we're trying to keep those serotonin levels more stable so that they're not spiking in serotonin. And then as soon as the medication wears off, it drops again and their migraine's back. It just delayed 24 hours or whatever it was. So, and that works for a lot of women if serotonin is a major component of their migraines.
And I would think too, that would be so exhausting, like just
For sure.
migraine on top of migraine. And I definitely, I don't know, like I said, too much about migraines. I maybe have had a couple in my life that were pretty bad. And, obviously I know what my sister goes through, and it is debilitating. I just can't even fathom one on top of the other. Now, excuse me, do you have different programs? And as you had mentioned, everybody is different, especially, women that come to you, everybody's case is very different. What is the process to working with a naturopathic physician? Because I know that sometimes when people hear that, they may be like, oh, not sure about that. So what is your process?
So my process is, as a migraine specific practitioner, maybe a little bit different. Generally, if you're speaking just about what NDs do versus a typical medical appointment, it's really going to be the same thing, but the amount of time is going to be much, much larger. So usually we spend between 60 and 75 minutes with our new patients to really get a full intake and a full understanding of their medical history. For me specifically, when we have a new client enroll with us, we are gathering kind of all the information. So of course, there's always a billion forms to fill out with any new practitioner. So they have kind of their medical history and medications they're on and supplements they're taking and things that they've already observed about their migraines. And, so we're gathering all that. If they're enrolling in our full coaching package, I've already spoken with them and kind of assessed them to make sure that, yeah, this is going to work for you. And so then I already have from that, 30-minute conversation, a really good idea of kind of the steps that we need to take and the things that are really standing out as a red flag to me. So I know where we're going to start. And then things become more clear as we continue working with them and they're noticing more and more about their migraines. And then, and then we just kind of move forward like that and assessing labs. We do a full saliva and urine test of neurotransmitters, hormones, and adrenals, cortisol levels, so that we can really kind of see where those baselines are. We take, the latest labs that they've had. We do a full in-depth thyroid and an iron evaluation. So we're looking at all of the different areas and kind of assessing, ruling things out, and then kind of narrowing down that list of, all right, these are the problem areas for you, and here's how we're going to tackle them.
Gotcha. And then obviously that's extremely thorough, as well as it should be. When you're doing all of these tests, do things pop up? For instance, maybe somebody's has a gluten sensitivity and they didn't realize it. Is it that type of test involved with it?
We have the ability to be able to have food sensitivity testing done for our clients, but that's not something that we necessarily do with everybody. But what we do is we focus in on a strong anti-inflammatory whole foods diet. So really helping people to understand the nutrition that their body needs in order to be able to be set up for, because one of the things that we see all the time is that the one thing that you can control with your migraines is what you're eating. And so whenever you find something that triggers you, it goes away. And we end up then seeing people that have been eating, chicken and rice and broccoli for 3 years, right? That's the extent of their diet because they know that those foods are safe. But unfortunately, then we start seeing a lot of malnutrition because there's not the full spectrum of nutrients in those 3 foods. And so then we're starting to deal with, a nutrient depletion issue, which actually compounds the problem. So I like to talk about how, of course, if there's any triggers, we're going to take them out for now, but then we need to reintroduce foods as soon as we possibly can so that we're making sure that instead of looking at it from a point of restriction, we're looking at it a point of expansion and getting as many nutrients as possible. And so we're helping them to kind of discover new foods that are readily available now that we have Amazon and all these online things, and helping them to understand, well, what is teff, what is sorghum, how do I make those things that you don't necessarily know what they are, but then you start to understand, there's more options than just gluten and rice. And so we kind of do that, and then as we see how things are progressing, then we very systematically add foods back in. And if they, by that time, they've been really paying attention to their body and they can tell, yeah, the gluten is a no-go for me. And so then they just keep that out, but now they've already got 4 or 5 other things to substitute it for. And then we kind of move forward that way.
Oh, gotcha. And that makes so much sense. And I do have a very specific question about one food. Tomorrow, by the way, is World Chocolate Day. So my question is, for somebody suffering from migraines, could chocolate be a big no-no?
Could it be?
Oh,
yes, it absolutely could be. It's not a food that's across the board going to trigger it, but it has caffeine, and it has it has theanine and what's the other one? That's magnesium, theanine and magnesium, very helpful in migraines. And some people actually find that it can be helpful during a migraine. And then some people, especially because of the caffeine content and or the sugar, depending on the kind of chocolate that's being eaten. And then of course, if it's one of the, like a milk chocolate or something that has dairy and soy and some of those other more pro-inflammatory things, then those things in the chocolate can be triggers as well. So yes, it can be, unfortunately.
Oh boy.
I know. So sad. But there are alternative options that are chocolate-like, carob being one of them. Mm-hmm. It takes a little bit of a change of the taste buds, but it's not bad. It's not bad.
I think I've had that before. Carol, so have you noticed any, one specific thing that you realized was maybe triggering or led you down that migraine path?
First, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, good, because the volume on my end, when a call comes in, I hit decline when I'm on my phone, it takes the volume down. So I just want to make sure you can hear me fine. Yeah, same thing. I really probably about 90% dairy free now. I found alternatives to using dairy, still enjoying food in such a way that I'm missing out on those items, because I've replaced them with like maybe a vegan version of maybe that dairy product that I wanted. Chocolate is definitely a trigger for me specifically, and caffeine. And that is why I'm not a big fan of caffeine. With the gut health that I do, it's natural and it's actually extracted from the tea leaves. That is fine. But sadly, so many things today with chocolate, coffee, anything with energy drinks, those things are all processed. And processed food is a nightmare for somebody that has migraines. The chemicals just don't react well. And that actually will, for me, will even enhance the pain even more. So I really avoid anything that's processed. Very rarely do I eat anything canned. Canned tuna, yes, but I make sure it's like packed in water. I try to avoid, unless I'm deathly ill, I try to avoid like canned soups. I mean, John likes his certain soups in a can, but I really try to avoid anything in a can, anything dairy and caffeine. And once I, recognize that, because you don't always associate dairy with a headache. A lot of times when you hear of dairy issues, it's related to your gut and not necessarily your head. So there are foods out there that can trigger it. Another, I think, no. For some is fried food. Again, it's just the process of how it gets in your system and how it's made. So, once I kind of realized it wasn't just the obvious of the caffeine or the coffee or the chocolate, that dairy was also a culprit, that has really enhanced my enjoyment to eat. I don't have to worry about such things. Now, obviously, you can't always avoid it, depending on, if you're out and about, or you're at a friend's house or whatever, and you don't want to deprive yourself. But I really, for me, I think it's to the point, and I think this is a hard piece for a lot of people that do suffer from migraines, is the resolution that you just have to say, what, is it worth the pain? And 9 out of 10 times they're going to say, no, it's not. But then your body also craves what's not good for it. And that's the other piece, is balancing those cravings and saying, no, I'm just not putting my body through it. It's not worth it. And that goes for migraines and other chronic illnesses. We have to kind of resolve the fact that it's like a poison to our body, and it's no fault of us. It's just the way that we're made up.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And Dr. Tanya, what are some maybe different recommendations, just based on what you've heard, if you don't mind me asking, Carol, so what Carol Sue has said about her migraines, what would be like one thing that maybe sticks out to you?
As far as something that might be causing her migraines, or what?
Right. Yeah. As far as like the causation.
Yeah, well, I mean, it sounds like she's kind of narrowed things down. So diet and stress are the two absolutely biggest things. And so, as she was kind of talking, I was like, fantastic. Like she's figured out the major dietary things and kind of figured out the diet that she needs to eat. And she's already done, the processed food is a killer. And, there's that struggle of when you feel like crap all the time, how are you going to make your food? But then if you don't start making your food from a whole food standpoint, then you're kind of stuck in this cycle. So then, so we've got little cheats and things. The Instant Pot or the Crock Pot is our best friend when you're getting started. You just literally throw everything in a hole, and then you kind of learn how to make it. But yeah. And so, gluten, dairy, nightshades like potatoes and tomatoes, corn, soy, sugar, a big one, and I'm missing one, but those all tend to be eggs. Those all tend to be pretty pro-inflammatory for a lot of people. So going with kind of a whole foods anti-inflammatory diet, like something like the Whole30 is a great place to start if somebody's never explored it. And that can be a really good way of kind of starting to see how eating this whole foods diet can be very helpful for the migraines. So I would say, the first thing is working on that and then starting to support gut health. And she's already done that too. So, I mean, she's hit all of the things that I would say, okay, well, based on what I've heard, there's going to be a detox issue because everything was kind of started with, the spinal stuff and the C-section, and there's lots of antibiotics, and that usually is a negative impact on the gut. So,
Right.
And it sounds like she's been through all of that. She's worked on the dietary changes. She's worked on the gut health. And so as part of that, she's going to have done detoxing, whether it was intentional or not, because that's what happens when you start healing the gut, is your body starts to detox and reduces inflammation.
Right.
So congratulations to you. Like that's amazing to hear that you've been able
Well,
to figure that
it
out.
is trial and error. And it's, the other key piece to it is when you're in that cycle and you realize, well, you know what, it's not a question of, grabbing that Tylenol or that migraine medication, or, reaching out to my doctor who, I'm probably annoying the crap out of because I can't get out of this funk. You also have to reach a point that, we are the only ones that are the best advocate for our own bodies. We know our bodies the best. And if it's difficult. I know it's very difficult for people to keep that journal and to, be held accountable to themselves to say, you know what, there are certain foods that I just can't eat, and you have to accept that. And it's not easy, but there are great alternatives out there. I always tell, everyone that I know that suffers out there, it's really just understanding what your body can tolerate. It may be different from somebody else that who suffers migraines. We don't look alike. We say this all the time. We don't look alike. Our insides are not alike. Our personalities are not alike. We're all very unique, and we have to be mindful of that. And but how would someone get a hold of you, Doctor? I would love to make sure that our audience, our viewers and listeners know how to reach you.
Sure. So my website is migrainemastery.org. So they can always find me there. I'm also on Facebook under Migraine Mastery is my page, and I have a free support group called my Migraine Mastery and my migraine support. And then on YouTube, it's Migraine Mastery and Migraine Free Life.
Thank you so much. There's so much yet to discover. And if you are hearing this, if you are listening, if you are viewing this, please get a hold of Dr. Tanya. If you suffer from migraines, we know that she'll be able to help you out. We want to thank you so much for being here today. But before we sign off, we need Carol Sue to chat a little bit about Wealth Wellness Wednesday. Everyone, thank you so much for being here today. My name is Janice, aka Wellness Diva 5.0 with TwoSistas,
and this is Carol Sue, aka Naughty Boss, reminding everyone out there today is Wealth Wellness Wednesday. This is a day where we understand the importance of having a healthy relationship and mindset with money. One of those taboo subjects, right? But there's a great way that you can kind of get over that and understand and embrace money, that the more money that you have, you can do more. You can do more good things with. And it's not about the monetary. It's about the actual physical action of paying it forward with kindness to an unsuspecting person. What does that mean? Again, it could be $1, it could be $5, it could be whatever you decide you want to give, but it's got to be an unsuspecting person, not your favorite charity, not your neighbor, not your family. It's about changing the direction of someone else's day with an act of kindness. So you can go to a store, you can slip in a bill into, sometimes I'll do a diaper bag, box of diapers, maybe formula. We know we have all those pet lovers out there, right? That those are like their own little family, they're little girls and boys, or grandkitties or grand doggies. So, go into the pet aisle. The cost of things have gone up. Gasoline, that's pretty obvious one. A lot of times I like to go there, and where you actually insert your credit card, I'll fold up a bill just like a credit card, and I'll have it just enough sticking out. And imagine what someone who's not suspecting it, who may be struggling, saying, geez, I could really only afford, a gallon of gas today to get back and forth from work. I'm really struggling. And you know what? $5 came in hand. They said, wow, now I can maybe put in a little bit extra gas and maybe still have an extra thing for a cup of coffee, although you know how I feel about caffeine. The point being is just to go ahead and pay it forward. Get on that good energy with wealth and wellness, and it is a healthy way to be. Get on that kindness train and pay it forward, and just imagine that everyone did that. How many people would be impacted? And they'd start scratching their heads and say, and maybe they may do the same thing. So that's what Wealth Wellness Wednesday is all about. We are so thankful and grateful that we had a great guest on today. Great information. Please reach out to Dr. Tanya for more information on how you can take control of your migraines. And with that, we wish you a great Wealth Wellness Wednesday. We will see you tomorrow for Trending Thursday. Hope you're going to be a trendsetter. Goodbye, everybody. Take care. Have a
Bye,
great day.
everyone.